Hi there, welcome to today's Viper vaccine special. Talking about any questions and answers that whole staff team and families who have joined onto this call may have. We also have a doctor, resident doctor that's kind of joining the call today called Guy, who has worked on the vaccine on behalf of the Imperial College London. Guy will be here to answer any questions that you may have. And the idea behind this webinar is to inform our staff teams and families about the current vaccine process and what that means, and allows people to ask any questions that they may have around any anxieties they may have around the vaccine. It's scheduled to last for probably about 1 hour, so this webinar is going to be a 1 hour session. What we would recommend is if anyone's got any questions along the way, that they add their questions to the chat bar, not shout out during the presentation. We can let Guy carry out his presentation first, and then we will answer any questions at the end. So if you can please place your microphones on mute throughout this webinar, and place any questions to the chat bar. Guy will answer them at the end. So with that, I will hand you over now to Guy, and Guy will tell you a bit about himself and lead into the presentation.
That's a bit of an introduction. My background academically is in biochemistry and microbiology. However, I very quickly after my doctorate bailed out of academia and decided to go into industry. So I spent the last 15, approaching nearly 20 years in the diagnostics industry, from food, dairy, water, brewing, veterinary, and obviously clinical medicine. When I'm not doing COVID-related business, I run a series of specialist diagnostic laboratories focusing on colorectal cancer and kind of precision oncology out of the University of Oxford. So that's me. And like I say, I'm here today just to give you a bit of a talk around the vaccine, and most importantly, to help try and answer any and all your questions about your concerns and just general information. One thing I will say is that I won't be able to answer all of your questions, because there's some stuff that we just don't know. And if that, we come across these kind of things, I'm just to hold my hand up and say, we don't know. I'll give you what information we do have and what it suggests. But like I say, I'll present it in terms of the actual factual evidence and what we know at this stage. So like I say, I won't be able to answer everything, but I'll do my very best. I'll be 100% straight with you, okay? So probably the first thing I want to do is, and I won't be long about it, so please don't think this is going to be a drone. I'm going to go through, just run through a few slides just to give you a little bit of background and kind of kind of frame the discussion a little bit. So I'm going to share my screen, and what I want to talk to you about basically here on the slideshow is, from the beginning. So that's me, and this is Vaxport. And what I want to talk to you about is vaccination in the context of public health. So in terms of public health, there's maybe 3 things in the last 500 years that have made a bigger contribution to public health and saved more lives than anything else, okay? So I've got them here in possibly their descending order of importance. So the first one at the top here is sanitation. So that's proper water treatment, sewage treatment, and measures around that. That on its own has saved arguably billions of lives. Vaccination, equally, so basically since the turn of the century, has equally, or a great extent, contributed towards saving the lives of hundreds of millions of people worldwide. And like I say, the third one, antibiotics, obviously has made routine surgical procedures that would have been deadly in the past something that infections has been profound impact on humanity. So what are we out, that's stopping the problem happening from in the beginning, stopping it even occurring, rather than of preventative measures in terms of public health is immense. And like I say, I just want to kind of frame that and say the contribution. What is the purpose of vaccine? You get from the disease, better immunity to get disease without actually risking you getting the disease. Okay, that is the overarching principle in this. It's to give you the protection of a robust immune response that you would get from the disease, but without putting you through all the nastiness and risk and whatnot. So, in terms of this immune response that gives you the protection, what is that? What does it look like? Right. So, if you look at the human immune system, there's broadly two arms of it. There's the innate immune system, and we're not going to really talk much about that today. It's basically a kind of hardwired system that responds to kind of basic, very primeval molecular patterns that are just never good news, and it's a kind of backstop to your immune response. What we really want to talk about is the bit that's most relevant to fighting a viral infection, and particularly a new viral infection, and that's the adaptive immune response. Okay. Broadly, that comes into two kind of categories. You'll probably have heard both of them talked about at various points in the news and such. The first one I'm going to talk about is the T cell response. So that's mediated by, as the name suggests, the T cells of the immune system. And what it does is it goes around looking for infected cells. So cells that have been infected with the virus, and there's all sorts of nonsense going on inside, and they're about to, or they're imminently going to burst open. Lots of new viruses are going to fly out and cause and perpetuate the infection. So these guys are looking for cells that the virus has already got into, and it does so. It kind of, the T cells come up and they kind of look on the surface of the cell, and that gives them clues as to what's going on inside. And if they don't like the look of it, they trigger a thing called apoptosis, and that makes the infected cell basically disintegrate and just fall apart. Just literally pops it, bang, gone, and that stops the virus replication. And all the bits are then recycled, packaged up, and sent off to literally the cell's recycling center. Okay, so that's the T cell response. So the other thing that's really important to fighting the virus is the antibody response. Okay, so that's mediated by what we call B cells. So the antibodies mediated by B cells, and what B cells do is they produce antibodies themselves that are these Y-shaped proteins that are very, very good at sticking to non-self or like pathogens, viruses, bacteria, and whatnot. So the beta cells secrete these antibodies, and the antibodies go off, and you'll see in the second little panel here, they stick to the virus. They do it in a couple of ways. You can kind of stick to a couple of bits of it. They can surround it completely in a process known as opsonization, or it can stick them all together in a big lump and stop them infecting that way. That's called agglutination. Okay, so it stops the virus physically, gums it all up, and then also when it binds to it, that binding targets it for a thing called phagocytosis, which basically being munched up by a big Pac-Man-esque immune cell, a phagocyte there. And basically, so it gums the virus up, and then that gumming up actually targets the gummed up virus for recycling as well. So it gets dragged off to the molecular kind of recycling yard, pulled to bits and destroyed. So the antibody and the T cell response are the two most important bits. And basically what we want to do with the vaccine is kick off these two responses, but without giving you the virus. Okay. So how do we do that? Or, how do we go about doing that? So this here is a graph showing the progress of an infection in a person. Okay. So day 0 right at the left here. The red line is what we want you to look at, and that's basically the presence of virus. So first couple of days, it increases your pre-symptomatic, you don't know you've got it. The virus rises and the titer rises in your system until you start to see symptoms around day 5. Slightly before that, the test will be able to slightly pick you up. And then you progress into the symptomatic phase and off to the kind of peak levels of virus in your system at about day 15, and they tail off after that as your immune system gets on top of it. Okay. So what's the immune system doing? Well, as I discussed, it was using that T cell response to get rid of the infected cells, and then it was using the antibodies to get rid of the virus itself. Antibodies come in flavors. They act at different times, so they're not all the same. So if I can point you to this blue line here, this blue line represents a type of antibody called IgM, right? They're the shock troops of the immune system. They go in fast, they appear very quickly after the infection set in. They go in, they get on top of the infection, they clear it out. They don't hang around for long though. By day 25, they've dropped off and disappeared. But what you'll notice is this green line has started to arrive, okay? This is your IgG antibodies. So it's uncoded, but it's got a slightly different character. It does a different job. As you can see, it takes longer to get to the party, but when it does get there, these level of IgG go up and they stay up for an extended period of time, months, even years. And that's the thing that gives you the long-lasting immune protection. So that is really what we want most, is a great big strong IgG antibody response when you're given the vaccine, okay? So the vaccine itself, two technologies that are currently being in advanced stage 3, and one's been licensed, the Pfizer-BioNTech and the Oxford-AstraZeneca. I'm going to try very quickly to explain the differences between these two technologies, and then I'm going to shut up and let you ask questions. So, like I say, I'm going to attempt to do this. So, in order to understand the vaccines and how they work, I'm going to have to teach you a little bit about molecular biology. I know it sounds like it's not, right? What I want to focus on is what we call the central dogma of molecular biology that goes on in all of our cells all the time, okay? And that's your DNA. It's gets transcribed into RNA, which goes off into the cell, out of the nucleus into the cell, and it gets made into protein, and that protein goes and does a job. That job might be a little machine that snips something up, or it might be becoming a kind of bit of structure, like a scaffold or a brick or something like that, okay? So your DNA is the kind of plans, the RNA is the kind of sub-designs, and then they go out into the cell and are made into protein, which is the little machines that go and do the job in the cell. What that job is, it can be many, many things. Like I say, this happens all the time in all your cells. It's fundamental to your kind of existing, continued existence. And what the virus and the vaccine do is they hijack this to make virus proteins instead of human ones. In the case of the virus, it makes all the virus proteins that you need to make lots of new viruses, and it puts those together and goes and infects more cells. The vaccine only has maybe one of the virus proteins, and what the job of that virus protein is to go off and set off the immune system and trigger all the antibody and T cell responses that I talked to you about before. So that's what goes on. In terms of the Pfizer, BioNTech and the Moderna vaccines, they're referred to as mRNA vaccines, and they basically take that normal situation and they kind of, the vaccine that gets stuck in your arm has a little bit of mRNA that's got the code for the virus spike protein on it, okay? That goes into your cells when you get injected with it. The normal machinery within your cells that makes protein in a normal situation gets tricked into churning out a bit of virus protein, right? And that virus protein goes and it sets off your immune system in the way that the normal virus infection would. So your immune system now knows what the virus looks like and it won't miss it a second time, okay? So that's how the mRNA vaccine works. The Oxford vaccine, and there's going to be others as well, Johnson & Johnson have a similar technology, and actually the Russian one uses a similar way of doing it. They do it in a slightly different way. So it's more about the delivery rather than what's going in, because it's still viral spike mRNA. So what they do is they take a different virus, an adenovirus, and they take out all the bits of the adenovirus that make it able to go on and make more of itself, okay? And once they've gutted it out, they put back in, recombine, a little bit of the virus spike RNA, exactly the same as before, and they have a little leader sequence on the front of it for transmembrane activator. The reason that's important is because that's made in all cells all over your body, so it means that you can inject it anywhere and it works. And basically what happens is the replication deficient adenovirus is used as a kind of what we call a vector, a kind of Trojan horse to go into your cells it then dumps out the mRNA for the spike protein, and then that tricks, the same thing as the Moderna, tricks your normal protein expression machinery to make a little bit of the virus spike protein, which again goes on and kicks off the immune system in the ways that we've discussed. So that's broadly how they work. And I just want to address a couple of things right out the gate in terms of the safety and the efficacy of this thing. So I've heard a lot of people talk about corners being cut. That isn't the case. All the things that would be done normally over a 5 to 10 year period of time have been done exactly the same this way. They've been done, yes, they've been done quickly, but they've also been done a lot concurrently. And one of the big things is a lot of the kind of obstructions and kind of administrative blocks have been basically cleared out of the way. Normally between each stage of these vaccine trials, there's 2 or 3 years of sitting around, scratching your head, wondering where the money's going to come from for the next one. That hasn't been an issue here. It's been, fast-tracked. It's been backed by governments. It's been backed by industry. So, like I say, all the resources to do this have been put in place. And like I say, no corners have been cut, but things have been run in parallel and they've been speeded up to a great degree. So that's been laudable. I can speak from my involvement with the Oxford team, not with Pfizer and stuff like that. The people who have worked on this vaccine are I can personally vouch for their professional integrity. They are some of the most honest, hardworking people you'll ever meet. One thing I would mention about the vaccine trial thing is the role of the Independent Data Monitoring Committee, which is an independent body, not beholden to anyone, not the drug companies, not the government, not the MHRA, no one. And they are put in sole charge of monitoring the data. And like I say, they have absolute dominion over the trials and they can shut it down at any point. They have full access to all of the safety information. And like I say, we've already seen them in action when working with the Oxford and the Pfizer teams. And the other thing I would draw attention to is the MHRA and its independence. So the MHRA is the body responsible for licensing vaccines. And like I say, I work with them a lot. They make my life quite a lot harder a lot of the time, but I sleep safe. I sleep better in my bed knowing they're there, because they are extraordinarily rigorous and they have extraordinary integrity as well. So knowing that they are out there watching, policing the whole operation is, to me, very reassuring. So I'm going to shut up now and open the floor to questions. So like I say, if you want to shout out, or if people want to just pop stuff into the chat bar, I'll do my level best to keep up with them.
Yeah, no trouble.
Hi Guy, can you hear me?
I can indeed.
Oh, yeah, I'm Connie, nice to meet you. I've received a few from various members of staff, and I was just wondering if I could just work through them. Is that all right? And obviously, I totally understand if you can't answer them. I get it. So the first one really is, what are the known side effects?
So the known side effects, so broadly, both of the vaccine technologies that I described have very, very similar side effect profiles. The primary side effects are what we call reactogenic side effects. So that is the immediate reaction of the immune system to the introduction of the vaccine. They are basically come in 3 flavors. The first is kind of local soreness on the arm. So some people, about 30 to 40%, depending on which vaccine, got a little bit of kind of achiness in the arm where near the site of injection. The other one that's notable is in, again, about maybe 30 to 40% of people, a mild fever, so pyrexia, lasting up to about 12 to 24 hours in some cases. And then the other thing that's been reported is a slight fatigue, so basically kind of just, a kind of lower energy and a bit of kind of malaise and fatigue up to 48 hours following the inoculation. Those 3 things are the kind of side effects that they've uncovered. There hasn't been any indication of anything more serious or anything that's more rare. Like I say, in the Pfizer vaccine, now had nearly 50,000 people in the trial, and there's been no sign of anything like Guillain-Barré or anything which you would expect if it was an issue to have occurred by then as well. So to my mind, it's a very good safety profile. Like I say, you have the three kind of reactogenic elements: bit of fever, bit of soreness, and a bit feeling a bit kind of like just general lack of energy for
I think we're all feeling like that a bit at the moment anyway. So.
Well, this is the thing. I'm not sure those are really distinguishable from the background at the moment. So.
I love the idea of virus reflecting life.
So another one that I've just been asked is obviously that in the news a couple of days after the vaccine went live, there was kind of information released about people's knees. And so the question really was, why were people with allergies given the vaccine if they knew that they shouldn't have really had it, if that makes sense?
Well, the trial data suggested that it would be okay. Well, certainly they didn't have any allergic events in the trial. However, what did happen is in literally the first couple of days after the vaccine went live, 2 NHS staff were given it, and they had what we call not anaphylactic, it's anaphylactoid reactions, which are much milder, but they involve reddening of the skin and a shortness of breath for a period. So that happened to 2 people, and basically for about half an hour they were observed while they recovered and whatnot. What is notable about those 2 individuals is that they had a long and storied history of rather severe reactions to food, cosmetics and medicine in general.
Okay.
And though those 2 incidents basically triggered that warning, where there hadn't been any evidence of that before, that to my mind is actually reassuring that the surveillance system is actually working, that they were on it that quickly.
And the transparency system as well.
Right, nobody's hiding anything here. It's
No,
all, and that's
no.
really important. It's got to be seen, not just be, really open and honest. It's got to be seen to be open and honest. So, like I say, there's particular circumstances around that, and to my mind, it's reassuring that they were on it so quickly.
Okay, thank you. And just another one, sorry, is who can't have the vaccine? Obviously, we're aware in the news and media that pregnant people, they're suggesting that pregnant people can't have it, but are there any other categories of people that shouldn't have it?
So as I understand, it's not yet been released for under 16-year-olds.
Okay.
So if you've got, probably not any child labour probably isn't a huge issue with you guys, but do you know what I mean? Or hopefully not anyway. But if you've got interns or whatever, so they shouldn't be. I don't think they've been advised that they should take it as well. Pregnant people, pregnant or planning to become pregnant imminently, so that is another group. So I think the advice is if you're planning to become pregnant in the next 3 months, you should avoid taking the vaccine. I think that's the line. And then obviously people with severe allergies, anybody that carries an EpiPen or anything like that would be kind of, and in terms of that, my honest belief is that people say, okay, you don't carry an EpiPen, but say you've got an allergy to, I don't know, eggs or cheese or something, you're a bit worried. It is absolutely clear to me, and I strongly advise that you send this message to your staff. Go and talk to your own GP. He has your medical history. He has your notes.
Yeah.
He is absolutely the best person to discuss what's right for you. So, like I say, it's the government are making guidelines on a general level, and they're trying to make one that fits for all.
And everyone's health conditions and history is completely different.
Exactly that. I mean, people, and for instance, my workplace, my colleagues, all sorts of people had things that worried them that you'd never been a problem now. So it's important to talk with their doctors and get the advice on their individual basis, because, like I say, the sheer variety of people's kind of general health, underlying conditions, whatnot. So it's really important that you seek your doctor's advice. And I know they're busy at the moment, but for the sake of a phone call, and is there anything in my medical history that suggests that this could be a problem, or I suffer from this, is this an issue? Please
I think a lot of doctors' surgeries, and this is quite broad to all our staff, is a lot of doctors' surgeries are are advising you to email. If you've got any queries, you can email them and, you know, go online and do, I know my GP surgery does like an e-consult where, you know, if you've got any queries at all, you can just email them and they'll come back to you within kind of 48 hours.
Exactly.
So it's worth going down that route, isn't it?
Definitely.
So sorry, Guy, just to what my really last question is, I know that you can't guarantee this, and you don't know this, but I'll ask it anyway. Is there any kind of sight of any long-term effects or side effects or issues that, you know, these you see on pill packets, don't you? And in the information, and it's kind of rare, very rare, extremely rare. You know, is there anything that is like extremely rare that any of us, you know, might see later on in 10 years?
So at the moment, evidence at all that there is anything, any, you know, unknowns, rares, very rares. One thing I would say is the way they mitigate this. So I can't. Very, very long-term data does not exist, and so I have to hold my hands up there and say there are still unknowns.
Yeah.
What I would say is that the way they've structured the trials has been deliberately to mitigate or to find any, not so much long-term, but what to distinguish from long-term is very rare events. So the way they do that is by increasing the trial power size, the number of enrollees into the trial to monstrous levels, 40, 45, 50,000 people. And at that level, you would expect to see a handful of incidences of anything that was worrying, okay? And we have not seen any of that, to be perfectly honest. They've been very, very kind of open about any people that have been ill. But as you can imagine, if you take 50,000 people off the street randomly, some of them are going to get sick. Do you know what I mean? So it's very important.
A lot of people, isn't it? Yeah.
Right, exactly. It's a lot of people, and it's very important that that's very open in terms of the data monitoring committees in each of these trials have been excellent, in my opinion, in being very open with the public about what's been going on with the general health of these trial participants and stuff like that. So one thing I would say, so we don't know all of the picture, but we have a very good idea based on the very large trial size.
Yeah.
That it's, I mean, for example, one of the things that people have maybe heard of before is Guillain-Barré syndrome, which historically has been an issue with some vaccines going back many years. We deliberately do trials of the size that kind of thing would show up like a beacon if it was there. Okay? So yes, unknowns, but everything and a huge efforts have been made to eliminate the chances of any rare and very rare events. That said, you can't rule out the 1 in 10.
No, of course, I get that. Thanks so much for answering those questions, Guy. I really appreciate it. That's everything I had. If anyone else has got any, I'll mute myself.
There's a couple in the chat if around pregnancy and the fertility as well. So what out there are none. No evidence to start. Also, if we go back in history, looking at dozens of other vaccines that have been around for decades, and we do have long-term data, there has never been any evidence that any vaccine has affected fertility like that. So no evidence in the COVID vaccines, nothing in the kind of history of vaccination that would suggest that it is a problem, okay? What I'd want to do is separate that from the advice that's being given not to give it to pregnant people. The reason we're doing that is not because it affects fertility, it's because of what's going on inside a pregnant woman. It's extremely delicate bit of biology, and pregnant women are basically the peak of the risk kind of situation, if you know what I mean. It puts the vaccine in the same company as such dangerous, hideous substances as blue cheese and pate, which you shouldn't get when you're pregnant either. So that to kind of frame that's the caution that the medical world treats pregnant kind of pregnant women, and basically that is the reason for the abundance of caution around not giving it to people who are pregnant or planning on getting pregnant. That is a separate issue from any effects on fertility, of which there is no evidence, and we have never seen any. Like I say, back through. So that to address the kind of pregnancy, fertility, access of information there. Somebody else has asked, will I have to quarantine if I get symptoms after taking the vaccine? So what might have occurred, or probably has occurred to most of you, is when I said fever and fatigue, those would be two symptoms of the virus as well as vaccine side effects. So what do you do after the kind of immediate 48 hours after a vaccination round within one of your homes or your organisations? So a load of people going to get feverish, maybe 20% of your staff get feverish. What are you going to do about that? I don't know. And the advice has not been issued. So there's been various things suggested that basically any side effects as normal, and anybody who gets fever goes and does a quarantine. That, however, risks massively affecting your staffing rosters. So I personally don't think that is really a workable practical situation. There's been talk of declaring a 48-hour amnesty post-vaccination, where anybody who's had the vaccine assumes that any symptoms are not COVID-related. That comes with inherent risks as well, and I can't say I really recommend that. We've currently sought advice from the microbiologist Darren Alcorn and stuff like that down in Devon with regard to what their position around PCR testing of people with symptoms to rule out COVID as opposed to vaccine, if you know what I mean. And we haven't received any firm guidance on that. I think hopefully Shrien, who I'm sure some of you know, will be able to extract hard answers on that in terms of what they're advising us to do, because there's risks and problems with both ends of the approach there. And I'm not sure. My instinct is that somewhere in the middle ground, like presumptive quarantine followed by PCR. So you maybe have some staff out there look for a couple of days, but it's not full fortnight. Do you know what I mean? Something like that. Yeah. But I say we need the backing of the health board and stuff like that to actually formulate that guidance. They've kind of been admitted they've been slightly embarrassed by not knowing what to do either. So yeah, wait and see on that one.
We might need to design a policy on that for ourselves, I think.
Yeah. Somebody else in the chat room. Last few weeks. Yeah, I have no information with regards to headaches and migraines. There hasn't been anything reported, and certainly not in any of the side effects profiles for any of the trials that the 3 trials that I've looked at. So haven't seen any evidence that it would cause migraines. In terms of having the disease and then subsequently the vaccine, how does that situation work? People that have had the disease should still get the vaccine. That's really important. Again, I would seek your doctor's advice. Generally speaking, they are saying that basically as soon as you're recovered, you're fine to take the vaccine. I don't think there's any kind of stipulation on waiting. One thing I do see asked is people asking me about the flu vaccine and the COVID vaccine. If I'm going to get both, is there a thing now? The recommendation is that you wait 7 days between each. Do you not double bubble right on top of each other? So currently, if you're getting the flu or the COVID, make sure there's 7 days. You'll be advised, but you'll make sure there's 7 days between each of those. Milk and egg allergy. Again, I'm gonna strongly suggest that you talk to your GP about that. Let me see. So yeah, go for it.
Go for it. What? Can I ask a question? Can I?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, hi. Yeah, please excuse this question because obviously I think the answer is going to be obvious to you. Basically, if I have the vaccine, obviously that hopefully gives me the immunity. What my mum is asking, who's in complete isolation, is could I still potentially be a carrier to somebody else?
Right. So Once the vaccine rolls out, please, it's not going to be a suddenly, right, tear off the PPE and start, licking doorknobs and stuff like that. That's strongly not advised. If you are vaccinated, if this is a contaminated glass, even you're vaccinated or not, I can still pass that on to something else I touch. So it's really important that even as the vaccine rolls out, we don't forget our hand hygiene, our respiratory hygiene. We maintain the use of PPE. We still continue to use distancing and whatnot until we've got that herd immunity up to the level where infections are very, very low in the community and stuff like that. So it's not going to be a sudden, tearing off.
Belly is hollow. Have you not got anything in there at all?
So basically, yeah, you will still be very careful with cleaning and disinfection because you're still able to transmit it even if you don't get infected just by touch. So things like your hand hygiene, your cleaning and disinfecting, all your other infection control measures should stay in place. And my feeling, and again, I think this was echoed by Eve Carter on the other calls, is that it will be a gradual setting process, and it'll take us long to get rid of it all as it took to put it all in place, if you know what I mean. So, it'll be gradual relaxation until we come back to somewhere near normal, but we'll still have to do, certainly in the short term, all of the correct things, hand hygiene, PPE, all that kind of stuff.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Good question.
Good question.
Thank you.
No problems at all. If there's anybody else, please feel free to shout. There was there talking about people who've had the disease and or getting the vaccine as well. Generally, what we've seen in this relatively low levels of people in the trial actually got the disease, but what we've seen from past vaccines is that people who've had the disease and then get the vaccine get a very, very strong immunity to that. So if you've had the disease and you get the vaccine, it's certainly in for past vaccines, we've seen those people get an extremely strong protection. And so if you've had the disease, you should definitely still get the vaccine. Any other questions?
If anyone's got any questions, you can unmute yourself. Some people have got their microphones muted. So if they unmute them, so down the bottom left-hand side of the screen, you'll see a little bar at the bottom that says mute or unmute. So if you click on that, it should unmute you. So a couple of you are muted. So Emma's Montague's muted.
Oh, we've got another question.
Oh, great. Yeah.
just something else I've just thought of. So if we hopefully have the vaccine, you probably don't have the answer to this, but do you have any idea at the moment roughly how long we will have immunity, or as much immunity as we can get?
Right. So when you see the kind of effectiveness figures published, say 95% or whatever Pfizer thing, that is the figure at 8 days after your second dose. So first dose, 21 days, second dose, 8 days after that. So 28 days from the first dose, you're then peak protected 95%. Okay. We obviously don't have a massive years and years of data, so we can't tell for sure. And the honest truth is, the question is basically we don't know yet. But based on previous vaccines, where they can say, right, what level of IgG antibody was developed, and then they can extrapolate the kind of drop off they see and see how long it will go. Predictions is it's currently going out at least a year. So at least a year. So there's still a chance it might be one of these annoying annual vaccinations, but we don't know yet. What I would say is that there was a deliberate design choice in the Oxford type vaccines with that adenovirus, using that adenovirus as the way to get the RNA into the cell to get the immune reaction. Adenovirus is picked because it has a reputation for leaving a lasting memory in the immune system. So if it doesn't get forgotten easily, as a kind of guest in your body, it leaves horrible, great muddy footprints all over the place, and everybody remembers it. So basically, that we might be in a position with that vaccine in particular, where the immunity you get from the vaccine is considerably more durable and long-lasting than any immunity that you would get from the disease. So that's probably a really nice place to be, but we don't know yet. The indications are good that it will last a good long time, but we haven't been around that long.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Another question that I've got in the chat bar that was asked to me earlier actually is, will the vaccine cover if COVID mutates?
Right, so this is a stonker that's only been stimulated by what I have to say is a really, really unhelpful announcement by Matt Hancock last night. To draw attention to the issues at hand, there apparently is an emerging new strain of COVID, basically that seems to have come out of somewhere in the southeast of England. That sounds terrifying. I've seen the headlines this morning, and they are really, really unhelpful. Talk of mutations and whatnot, it sounds really scary, and indeed in certain cases it can be. All the indications so far are that this is nothing to be worried about. One or two things we did see earlier on is the you've seen around a mink farm in Denmark, and there was a mutant strain emerging there. For a few hours before we got the data, that looked, because the mutants that had happened were in a particularly, or an area that you don't want it to happen in. However, upon investigation, while the place that the mutation had happened was quite scary, the actual mutation, the change itself, was nothing to be worried about. So that was a false alarm. I don't know anything about this emerging strain. I've been on GSI Aid all morning looking for this, waiting for the stuff to be published. PHE has not released the sequences yet, so I just don't know. What I have heard on the jungle drums overnight is that it does not appear to affect the efficacy of the vaccine. So the thing with the vaccine efficacy is that spike protein on the outside of the coronavirus. The antibodies that recognize it do it via shape, and if that spike protein changes its shape in any way, it can be problematic. Basically, it's so far we've not had any scary mutations in that spike. That's not to say they won't happen in the future. The one that we're seeing coming out of the south of England apparently is nothing to worry about, but I haven't seen the data itself. And finally say, basically, nothing we've seen so far in terms of changes in the virus suggests that there'll be any problems with it, with the mutation and the vaccine. That's not to rule it out completely in the future, but so far, so good, is the message there. And like I say, but I'll be honest, we never quite know what this sneaky little git of a virus is going to do next. So it may pull a fast one on us, but as yet, it doesn't seem to be planning to do so. That's the best I can offer.
Right. Fine.
Another question, Guy, someone asked me this the other day actually, and I didn't know how to answer it, is obviously the vaccine potentially has side effects. Will the side effects be the same level as having COVID, or will it be milder version, or?
Generally speaking, you say the side effects would be milder than the side effects of the disease. However, the fever that's been reported and the fatigue that have been reported can easily be mistaken for COVID. So that's really the current thoughts. Like, yeah, generally much milder, but there's definitely overlap for them to be confused.
So just a question, if and some people have mentioned this to me before, if people develop the symptoms, which are extreme fatigue and so on and so forth, is the risk as great as having COVID?
No, absolutely not. Like I say, from what's been reported, that it's the very, very worst has been somebody feeling a bit iffy for about 48 hours, whereas the disease itself can leave you on your back for weeks at a time. Do you know what I mean? And worse, much worse. We know that. But yeah, it's, comparing the side effects to the vaccine to long COVID, that there's no comparison there. There's just no comparison there. Like I say, nobody likes feeling grimy. It doesn't happen to the majority of people, but we're talking 20-30% feel a bit, and maybe some folk have a wee sore arm, and the other folk feel a bit flushy for 12 to 24 hours. Do you know what I mean? But that, in comparison to actual symptoms of the disease, it's not a comparison, really, to be perfectly honest.
Hi guys, something I just thought about is so if you were to get the vaccine, have you guys got a percentage, or is there a percentage, of people who have gone on to actually get COVID and test positive for COVID?
Right, so when you see these vaccine efficacy figures published, again, what they're referring to is and they'll tell, each will tell you how the dosing's been done. So for Pfizer BioNTech, you get dosed, second dose at day 21, and then they measure the efficacy 8 days after. So 28 days after getting your first dose, they measure your thing. And at that point, it's 95% effective. And that means that if 100 people get the vaccine and they all get COVID sprayed all over them, like properly sprayed all over them, 95 will be fine, 5 will get it. What I will say from the trial data is that the 5 that get it will get an extremely mild form of it and may not actually become infectious. So even if you get it, it's near, again, we're still to see the final data, but if you think in terms of an endpoint, in terms of somebody going to hospital with COVID rather than somebody just getting tested positive, the vaccine is 100% effective. You can get out of hospital, right? 5% of people may get it, but it'll be so damn mild, you'll never know.
So if after that 28 days, you're 95%, so you're at your absolute peak, to being guarded from COVID, and we're kind of saying that this vaccine is going to last roughly 12 months. Would that mean that kind of at the end of those 12 months that it's kind of completely depleted, or?
No, it wouldn't be that. That wouldn't be the case. Like I say, it would be, it may have reduced a bit inside 12. Your titers may have reduced a bit inside 12 months. The other thing to note is that I've been slightly simplistic in my explanation of the antibody response as well. In addition to the antibody making cells and your IgG titer, your immune system has another trick, and it's these things called B memory cells. And basically they are kind of like normal B cells, but they're in hibernation, and they just kind of patrol around the body looking for any sign of any COVID. And the minute they detect it, they just burst into a huge avalanche of production of antibodies. So in addition to the antibodies themselves, you get these beta memory cells, which kind of hang on in the immune system for decades in certain diseases. So like I say, we suspect, or certain data suggests, we'll get a year, maybe more, out of the protection and stuff like that. But at the end of that year, it won't be a case of you're completely vulnerable again. It's just to get you back up to where you want to be. You maybe need a wee top up and stuff like that. We don't know if it will be an annual one yet. It may just go off forever, or for our lifetimes. It could be like a polio that lasts through your entire life. We don't know. But like I say, at the end of the year, if that is the case, it's not like you'll be completely vulnerable and stuff like that. But to get you where you want to be,
just a simple kind of top up, probably. Yeah.
Booster, classic booster situation.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for that.
No problem.
So has anyone else got any more questions? And feel free to ask any questions, no matter how small or silly.
Yeah, no such thing as a silly question here. This is a free-for-all zone.
No, I don't know if I missed it. Sorry, I came in late. I'd like to know sort of in simplistic terms, the scientific way the vaccine works.
Yes.
You've already done this. Apologies if you have.
Oh, not at all. Not at all. I'll pop up our slide up just quickly. That probably summarises it quite well. So, in terms of the way the vaccine works, it takes advantage of something that's going on in your cells anyway. So this is using DNA, which is the kind of master plan to subscribe into RNA, and that goes off into the cytoplasm of your cell, and it's made into protein that goes and does a wee job. That can be, I don't know, chop something up, or stick to this and hold it next to that, or whatever, a little job in the body. And this goes on in all our cells all the time. And basically what the virus and the vaccine do is they kind of sneak in and hijack that process to make viral proteins instead of the human ones. In the case of the virus, it makes all the viral proteins, and it goes on, makes more virus and gets you sick. In the case of the vaccine, it just makes one virus protein to let the immune system know what it's looking for. So the way the two different vaccines work. So the first one's the mRNA vaccine, so that's the Pfizer one and the Moderna one, right? So what it does is it uses what we call naked RNA. So we've got the normal process up at the top, DNA to RNA to protein, human, right? You add the vaccine, and what it does is it sneaks a bit of RNA that codes for this, the coronavirus spike into the mix, and that tricks your system into making a little bit of virus protein. And that, in this case, it wanders off and basically triggers the immune system to give an immune response, and that's what gives you the protection. So it essentially is kind of tricking your own body by introducing a little bit of RNA, which then gets made into a wee bit of virus protein, and that sets the immune system off. The Oxford one does it slightly different, and it actually packs the spike mRNA into the middle of another virus that's been disabled, so it can't make more of itself, and basically they use that adenovirus as a Trojan horse to get the same spike mRNA from the coronavirus into your cells and make a little bit of the spike protein and make your immune system kick off. So that's how the two things differ that we're going to see. Like I say, this one here, Oxford, that daft Russian thing as well, uses the adenoviral technology. Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna, and the one coming out of Imperial College, they all use that mRNA technology. So that's the two splits at the moment. We'll see other ones. Some of the stuff coming out of China is a recombinant protein vaccine. They're slightly different, a bit of an older technology, but still very effective. They've saved millions of lives. So yeah, but broadly, the two we've got work in those two different ways.
Thank you. And also, having watched, obviously you've got the knowledge, are there things environmentally, they're talking about the COVID diseases, that we can be doing to try and help with regard to these not mutating generally over the next, that this isn't going to become the new norm forever?
Yeah, well, one of the things, right, and so this is fundamental to kind of epidemiology and virology. The more infections that happen mean the more copies of virus get made, right? And every time you make a new copy of the virus, it risks having the way mutations happen is a mistake from one copy to the other. And most of them don't matter or actually are detrimental. But some of them are what we call gain of function mutations, which is what happened with the bat coronavirus that made it jump into humans. That was a gain of function mutation that happened there. And that's what kicked us all off. So the best thing we can do to stop mutations arising is not give the virus chance to reproduce, so to keep the infections down in the community. And this is going to sound like it's a contrived answer, but it's the honest truth. One of the best things we can do to keep infections down is to take the damn vaccine. And that way we get up to herd immunity. And when I say herd immunity, that's a concept whereby there's such a high level of immunity in the thing. If one person does get it, because he's surrounded by people who are protected from it, the chances of it getting passed on, and it just peters out and dies. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't spread out like an outbreak. And that's what herd immunity does. That starts to kick in at around 65% immunity. But you really want to get up to 85 for it to be properly effective, and just shut it. Basically, 85% infection outbreaks just get shut down themselves. They just peter out. They just go away, if you know what I mean. And if we keep the infections low, then the chances of it doing something dodgy and, sidestepping our vaccines or whatever become much lower. So the honest truth is keeping the number of the infection rate down is the best thing we can do. Also, not doing insane things like keeping millions of minks and stuff together do you know what I mean? And things that, like the whole wet farm in Wuhan thing, that's because there was an artificially high number of loads of different animals that wouldn't normally be there, all packed in with all the diseases, with a load of humans right next to them as well. So just avoiding daft stuff like this. You'll note that the flu pandemics, the bird flu and swine flu, they both came out of intensive farming operations and stuff like that. So I think we, as a species, need to take a bit of a look at our farming practice and whatnot, and some of the things we got up to in that regard. But broadly, to stop it doing, the coronavirus is in humans now, to stop it doing anything, or lower the chances of it doing anything nasty and then pulling any smart little tricks, don't give it the chance. And by not giving it the chance, don't let it infect people. So doing everything we're doing now, but sticking to it and being determined is the best thing we can do.
Thank you.
No problem.
Hi guys, something that I just wanted to kind of bring up as well is obviously our guys are all the staff over both homes have done incredibly well, and you know, I do think a lot of it is down to the PPE, you know, and all of us are, you know, endlessly, tirelessly wearing the PPE. And I just think it's really important to kind of say to staff really that, you know, that mustn't stop until we're guided really. And I know that's not really a question, because I feel like if you know, say 85% of our workforce did get the vaccine, that would be amazing. And obviously the protection that would have across the staff, and you know, which then filters down to the residents, would be amazing. But we just can't drop our guard yet. And you know, I think it could give us a kind of false sense of security really, in the fact that we've had the vaccine, it's really good, but we can't drop the ball in what we've been doing so far.
I have to agree. I mean, yes, we'll get to the point where things can come, if not normal, bloody close to it again. But as I think you're entirely right there, we cannot afford to become complacent. We've come too far. We've done too much hard work to throw it all away at the last minute. So, two things to note: it's 95% effective. That's not 100. Okay. And as you noted, it will take some time to get everybody up to the 85%. And it's okay if you get 85% of your staff and your residents there. Remember, they exist in the wider community. Now, I know you've had great success in kind of isolating homes from, you know, the infection risk posed by the general community and stuff like that. But that risk hasn't gone away until the rest of the country's 85% as well. So it's going to be a gradual stepping down of things. So yeah, please bang the drum. Don't let people become complacent. Like I say, even if you've got an antibody response that would, you know, your blood's absolute jungle juice, as I pointed out earlier, I can still pass that. You know, I mean, there's still ways of transmitting it by accident and by you just being a passive vector rather than an proper infectious, if you know what I mean. So yeah, don't drop your guard. And it'll, in my opinion, it will be a gradual stepping down as firstly the homes and your staff pool reach herd immunity, and then as the wider communities that we exist within reach herd immunity as well. And at that point, we can maybe think about drawing breath. But until then, we must be very serious about it. Say we've come too far and we've done too much hard work to be thrown at the last minute.
Okay, has anyone got any last final questions? I'm very aware that we've been on for an hour, so if anyone's got any last questions for Guy, if they can come forward. Go.
So if you were to get side effects, would it be after having both of the jabs, or could you get side effects after the first one and then the second again? Or
Generally, either or both. So you can, like I say, the second dose can, you know, first and second can leave you feeling, I think what we generally see is really very mild in the first case, and then slightly stronger side effects in the second dose out of 21 days. That is a generalization and very much dependent on the individual. A lot, God knows, what, 50% reported nothing on either. Do you know what I mean? It varies hugely with population. You know what I mean? That's one thing I would say, that making a vaccine is a very big achievement, but the real thing is making one that works for everybody. For me, from somebody, you know, on the other side of the globe, for my gran, for my, you know, 16-year-old nephew, you know what I mean? That's a real challenge, and it looks like they've come very, very close to doing that. It's been a very impressive piece of work. So.
Okay,
Sorry,
guys.
I've just thought of one something else. So obviously there's different variants of the vaccine, and I understand that the one that's kind of being rolled out now is you have to have over 2 doses. Now, am I right in saying that the Oxford you just have 1 dose? Is that right?
No, it's 2 as well.
Oh,
But
okay.
the big difference between it is that it can be held at fridge temperature for extended periods of time.
Okay.
And the Pfizer one needs to go in some crazy -70 freezer, so that's why it's being held in the hospitals, and it's a big distribution problem.
Yeah.
Oxford one's going to give you a big advantage in terms of getting rid of that cold chain, so it can go out to homes in the community.
Yeah.
But it's still 2 doses. However, the one to watch is the one coming from Johnson & Johnson Janssen, right? They have an adenovirus one, the same kind of technology as Oxford, but they reckon, we've not seen the results yet, they reckon it will work with a single dose. So that is the one that I've got my eye on, because I find it's got good cold chain storage conditions, it doesn't require anything mad, and it's only a single dose. If that works, then we're really flying, lads.
So I suppose if we're offered, we'll just get offered what's available right now. And if the Johnson & Johnson one hasn't been released yet, and that could take some time yet, but I suppose will come if in 12 months time, if we do have to have the top up, etc. Precisely
that. So my general advice would be get whatever, either vaccine as soon as you possibly can. If you can get access to it, use it, because it's a massive peace of mind. You know what I mean? That you're not at risk yourself, and you're not at risk to the people around you that you care for. Do you know what I mean? For me, it's like, you know what I mean? They still.
Yeah. And I suppose if enough of the country have it done, then we're going to build that
herd immunity.
Yeah. Just a very personal question. You might not want to answer this, but have you had the vaccine?
No. But I say I will be literally try and stop me. Yeah. As soon as I get offered it, I'll be round there with the sleeve rolled up.
Okay.
My little sister and my brother-in-law have had it because they're frontline. She's a surgeon and he's a crash nurse in A&E, so they've had it earlier this week.
And just out of interest, did they have any symptoms or anything?
Nothing. Literally, not. They've only had the first one, but they said they both felt fine. Like literally, no change. Yeah. And they're both medics, so they're both told.
Yeah. It's really just interesting to hear from somebody that from experience who's had it done.
Yeah, they reported nothing, and like I say, they're a pair of hypochondriacs. So if there was anything,
all right.
Okay, Guy. I think we can wrap that up now. I just want to thank everyone who's attended today. Hopefully, everyone's found it useful. And I'd just personally like to thank Guy for joining today. He's given up his own time today to come and talk to us here at Vision. And it's been really useful, Guy, and thanks again.
No problem.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed, Guy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Real pleasure. Thank you, guys, and take care and stay safe.
Yeah,
and you. Cheers. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Jerry, would you like to add anything, or are you okay?
No, I'm fine. After all the questions that got asked, I really just want to say thank you to Guy on behalf of everybody, and thank you for everyone for turning up. The Viper Group needs input from every single person who works inside this organisation, and that really helps today. And we've got so many things clear.
And if anyone's got any questions afterwards that you want me to place forward to Guy, just email me directly. I've got an open channel with Guy, so I can ask him directly and respond back to you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.